Hey there, everybody.
Alrighty. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll be starting now. We've sent a link to access the live translations and captions in the chat. And you're also able to scan the QR code on your screen right now. We'll be doing QAs at the end of your workshop, so please leave your questions in the form being displayed at the top of your screen. During the workshop, we'll have 2 live challenges where you will have a chance to win a $30 US dollar gift card. That was awful. One gift card will be drawn for each of the challenge among the correct answers. Don't forget to scan the QR code on the screen when it appears. Winners will be announced after all Connect 2023 workshops are completed. Now, I will hand it over to CJ, who will be talking about 25 ways of switching to Rojo will improve your experience.
Hey there. Thank you so much. My name's CJ, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Hello. So I have been on Roblox for a while, over 15 years, and in that time, I made 100 games, and those games have been played around 200 million times. I went to college as a game design major with a 3.8 GPA related to game design classes. I'm not lowering my GPA for the stuff which doesn't matter today. But yeah, so I took a lot of stuff related to game design. I even went to Japan to study game design there briefly. And yeah, I've been an intern 3 times, and I was voted most valuable developer in the 2022 spring accelerator program. And so yeah, when I say that Rojo is amazing, I'm not kidding. It'll change your developer experience from the ground up. But before you can really appreciate that, we got to see what is Rojo. And Rojo is a tool which allows you to connect Roblox Studio to an external tool, such as VS Code. This may seem simple, but as you'll get to see, this unlocks a ton of professional opportunities and functionalities. A Rojo workflow will save you time, it will save you debugging, and it will save you quality. You'll be able to make much better things easier, faster, and better. And in this presentation, we'll be talking about that in a bit more detail. Some of these things, like Git, you may recognize, and some of them you may not. You all probably have heard of code before. It's pretty cool. Yeah, and you can generate code with this. So let's jump into that. Okay, so using Git. What is Git? So Git is version control. We all have, let's see, got a little orange thing saying that I having streaming connection issues, so hang tight if that's causing any problems. But okay, back to focusing though. Looks good. Okay, so version control is essentially the one of the most important things you can have in a complicated project like this, because you'll be working on these kind of things for weeks, and you'll obviously have times where you want to go backwards, and you want to look back and think, okay, this previous version had some code or some assets that I wanted. And yeah, you've probably seen this in Roblox Studio. So it's not necessarily exclusive to Git, but Git is very powerful in ways that Roblox Studio currently is not. The first most notable way is in branching. You can, in almost a multiverse fashion, whenever you want, you can actually branch your entire project. You can have it split off and try things out. This allows for your programmers to work on similar systems without getting in the way of each other, for you to go one direction and then turn around without worrying about anything, or even losing access to that or whatever you were creating in that other branch. And yeah, it's just a pretty awesome technology that It's used very widely. And on top of that, you can also get uh, you can get some advantages in automation. GitHub offers this specifically, though I know that it's available in other services. I'm just most familiar with GitHub. GitHub's version is called GitHub Actions, where whenever you save your code essentially to the Git and push it, you can have it run a series of steps. It can check to see if all of the code compiles correctly. It can check to see, well, it can generate things. It can do whatever you feel is necessary to do. And it can refuse to publish the game even. Like if it's broken, it won't let you publish a broken update, or you can, you know, of course, use it to publish to multiple places at once. And I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but just know that automation through GitHub Actions is very important. And if you think that sounds interesting, that's what my entire presentation tomorrow is about for the most part. And there are a few options for hosting. GitHub is by far the most popular within the Roblox community. I used Bitbucket in college, and I know people have used GitLab. So you're welcome to explore those. I think unless you are really looking for something specific, GitHub is just a good default. It's free. There are paid versions if you want like a massive amount of storage, but it's a good service. And one thing that, let's see, transition to command line tools. So Git is, you know, saving work and all that stuff is pretty fun. Everyone loves saving work, but I'd say that command line tools will be the first genuinely exciting thing, at least to me, in this presentation. And that's because command line tools, just like every time you use one, it feels like you have a superpower. It's essentially programming superpowers. In order to run a command line tool, what you do is you just open up a terminal in VS Code. I recommend the bash one, and most of the things I'll be talking about will be doing it with the bash terminal in mind. But command line tools can be run from any terminal or console for the most part. Yeah, and so, for example, here you just type in the tool name, and then you can give it extra information afterwards. Those will be passed to it as parameters. And then you can decide what tools you actually download using something called Foreman. It's a Roblox developed software which allows you to install multiple tools to your terminal's environment at once, which can be super useful for making sure that you're using the right version for each project, because sometimes you'll have an older project which like needs a very specific version of a tool. And this makes it really easy to have multiple projects with multiple versions of the same tool running at once. But yeah, so let's talk about the types of tools specifically. Well, let's not stick to high level. Let's get to some examples. Stylua. I love Stylua because Stylua means I don't have to think about formatting as much. So as you can see on the left-hand side, the indentation has gotten mixed up. It's just a very confusing blob of code. And then after running Stylua, you could see it actually indents things correctly. And when different lines are too long, it'll actually wrap it to the next line to make sure it's consistently readable for your programmers. And also, don't worry, if you don't want it to wrap or you have very specific indentation ideas, it is configurable. It has a configuration file that you can edit. But yeah, if you're tired of to always manually update and maintain your formatting, especially when multiple programmers are doing or writing code into your project, this is just a really awesome tool for getting a baseline level of consistency in your code. Let's see. Must-have tools. Moonwave. This one's another fantastic one. It takes the concepts of document. So there's a wider industry use tool called Docusaurus. And my understanding is Moonwave is a wrapper for that. What it allows you to do is you can put comments directly into your code, and it will read your code and generate the documentation directly from it. I've used it half a dozen times before. Usually it's something I reserve for when I'm really trying to polish up a open source code I've made or have a group project. It's so useful for onboarding a new programmer into your code, and just having readable documentation in general. Yeah, so Moonwave is fantastic, and it's one of those command line tools that I think can really change things. The final one is a bit of a self-promotion. This was the first tool I made, and in many ways I peaked with it because it's by far the most useful tool I've made. Basically, when I was a game design major, I was always making stuff with spreadsheets. That was just part of our course load because spreadsheets are super useful for designing economies and in-game systems at a readable level. And so I'd end up with these massive, spreadsheets of just like asset configurations and all of that stuff, all the balancing tables. And it would just be so much easier to work there. And so what this does is it can take a Google Sheet, it can take a CSV file, and it can take a Excel file specifically. And it'll take that and generate it into a type safe giant module script, which you can of course use to hook up to your in-game systems. And so, yeah, this is an example of a code generation. And right now, almost every project I'm working on uses it because it's just so much easier to maintain than, constantly manually going through and changing a million different lines of code in a configuration file. And also as a bonus is because rather than using like a for loop to generate your file, it actually, by writing it all out into the code specifically, it allows autocomplete to really help you out and to really, tell you if you're indexing a real entry or not. So yeah, spreadsheet to Luau, I recommend. Okay, but tools are fun and all that stuff, but the types of I guess in-game functionality is what I feel excites most developers. The idea of adding a feature to their game without too much extra work. And Wally allows for this. Wally is all about open source code. And you might be familiar with these other ways to these other package managers. NPM, that's for JavaScript, pip, that's for Python, and then Cargo for Rust. So this is a pretty standardized concept. Well, not standardized. It's a fairly popular concept. And to those who are wondering, though, what is a package manager and why do you use it? A package manager is a way to download a bunch of different, useful modules or tools or I guess packages of useful code. And it does so in a way which allows for the various different packages to build off each other. For example, in this dependency, graph I have here, I have a package called Cold Fusion, which is built off of LTOPS Fusion and Quenty's Signal and Made classes. And then that Cold Fusion, I then made a GUI package for it, which also builds off the Made it. And I can, with these packages, I can update them whenever I need to via the command line, and I can make sure that this code is always synchronized between places. And one thing that I just want to quickly go over, which some of you may know, but if I'm going to be introducing you to the package manager world, you do have to understand semantic versioning. Y'all have seen it before. It's going to be very quick. The last number means something's fixed. The second number means something was added, but previous functionality should be the same. And the final number, or I guess the first number, means things have changed and it will break previous functionality. So integrate with caution. Yeah, definitely test it after you change the first number. Though, for what it's worth, you should always be a little bit cautious when integrating code, when just like updating code, because sometimes people will just mess up the versioning. But yeah, this in general, this is what it means though. And in order to download things from Wally, I usually I run something called a shell script. It's basically a list of commands that you can run in the terminal. This means that if I have multiple tools that I want to run in quick succession, I can do that. And I can even pass arguments to it, but that's for a different talk for sure. What I do in my personal shell script is I use a tool I made that updates your Wally configuration file. It updates all the packages in it. I usually update the minor, like basically all minor updates rather than the major ones. And then I install the packages after the configuration has been updated. I build a source map for it, which allows for the VS Code to better find everything. The language services in VS Code specifically. And then I actually export the types from Wally. So if you have for example, if you don't know, you can actually make custom types in Roblox, similar to TypeScript. And being able to export them and use them across other scripts can be super useful. And you can export them from Wally using a specific Wally package types tool by Johnny Morgans. And yeah, so here's some cool packages. First one is Boat Bomber's hashlib, which specifically is it's a very useful encoding tool. I use it all the time for compressing data when I'm sending it back and forth to places, or storing it for analytics, or all of that stuff. It just it makes things a lot simpler. And I also use it for something called MD5 hashing, which when used in combination with JSON encode, can be used to tell you if a large data structure has changed, because it's deterministic in the sense that even a small change in that table will dramatically change the code. So you can take a massive table and then see if it's the exact same as a previous version by just comparing two strings generated by the MD5 hashing. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. Camera shake. This is something which every game can be improved with a little bit of camera shake. With this package, it's an older package. Most of you've probably seen it and used it, but it's available on Wally. And if they ever make updates to it or add things to it, you could very quickly integrate it across your game and games plural. And yeah, I fully recommend. And then finally, once again, a little bit of self-promotion here. The physics util. The most useful part of it is by far the fact that it can convert between over 100 units, including the Roblox official units for things. So if you ever wondered like how fast a car is going in game, and you have like the assembly linear velocity, with this you can pretty easily turn that into miles per hour, and then you can turn miles per hour into kilometers per hour. You can turn it into how fast it's going at light speed. You can do all this stuff. It has over 100 units that it transfers between, as well as 60 arrangements of common physics equations you might learn in high school. Yeah, I use it a lot. Okay, generating code. I went into this briefly before, but code generation, I feel, is a superpower. It shouldn't be used all the time. There are definitely instances where generating code does not make sense. But when it does make sense, well, it'll change your life. So why should you generate a script? For one, it can promote type safety. If you look in this GIF here, I have a variable called prop ID, and I'm trying to set it, and it knows that the prop ID is supposed to be a string. And then when I index it as a price, well, that's a number, and so it errors with that. And as a result, if you generate, you can generate much more complicated types when the script's generated, because sometimes just manually maintaining all of these can be a real headache. And so having those more complex tables like the one here can really change, how many times you accidentally index something without it existing, which means the more type safe your coding environment can be, the longer you can code and without necessarily needing to test it after every line. Like when you have a fully type safe environment, it's not uncommon to type code out for an hour and have it more work the first time. And yeah, so it also avoids typos and repetitive manual edits. I had a enum class that I used to manually update, and I swear I'd make a typo every time, because I had to do like 10 very specific steps to add a new enum to it. And yeah, code generation helped me avoid that. And finally, I'd say one of the more useful things about code generation is it allows for the integration of other file formats. In the past, I've generated my entire game's configuration off of TOML files. I've generated what's it called? Oh, of course, balancing sheets off of CSV and Google Sheets. Let's see, Rojo itself will create a localization table off of a CSV. And I mean, like, really, the magic is that if through generation of a script and assets, you can pretty much hook up professional level tools. Like if there's a tool that's really good at making maps, you can integrate it. You can get that into your game through these kind of generative tools. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's talk about good languages to actually script in for script generation. I recommend Python. Just full stop. That's what I recommend. If you don't want to use Python, I recommend TypeScript. So the reason I recommend Python, though, is because it just has, it's all about data manipulation, and that's really what script generation is. It's changing data, and it just has so many packages available for helping you do that. Very rarely will you have to make your own things from scratch. There's almost always a free, amazing, fantastic, package available for you. And yeah, so Python's great. TypeScript is good. It's arguably a stronger language in its own right in many ways, but I do feel that because it's more like front end, it's not going to help you nearly as much in this instance. But it's type safe, and there is a decent amount of support for it. And then finally, Rust. You can try it if you like. It will be a big learning curve, but it has a good, good amount of packages. It's just a lot. So yeah, you try Rust if you're feeling brave. Try Python if you're actually wanting to get anywhere anytime soon. But no, give Rust a try when you're ready. Okay, so here are if none of those sounded appealing for you, I also wanted to mention, some other options, namely Luau, which is the language y'all should know already because it's the one Roblox uses. It's familiar, it's type safe, but there isn't really much support for it external to the Roblox market. And that'll change over time. But for now, you'd really be pioneering the ecosystem to do all your work in that. So I'd personally reserve it for just Roblox development. JavaScript is just TypeScript but worse, which is fair. I mean, it came out before it, so like, you know, TypeScript learned from JavaScript, but I don't know why you would use JavaScript other than just to have a more natural integration with like NPM style packages. But even then, once again, it's just more front end. It's not, the only reason I have it here is because there's a decent chance that of the other languages you'll know, JavaScript is one of them. And but yeah, so if you don't want to learn Python, I guess you could use JavaScript. And then Lua, of course, that's what Luau is based on, so you know how to use Lua. It doesn't have type safety, but there are packages for it. So yeah, these are the languages that I think would be okay for script generation. But let's talk about the things you can actually generate. In my case, what I generated was an enum type. Originally, I actually tried to emulate the Roblox enum class directly, but I found it was just a headache to pass between to pass from client to server because you can't pass a custom object between the client and server. So I ended up just going with an explicitly typed string, which, as you can see at the top, there's just a union of different strings. And then I can use that. Then I generate basically the entire hierarchy to allow me to index things directly, as well as included some functions which are basically a million if statements that allow me to get the index of things, aka the value of them. And so I can get all the functionality of the main class without necessarily having to you know, do anything fancy for passing it from client to server. And yeah, I think it worked out pretty well. Yeah, and because it's manually generated, all the, you know, like let's say I wanted to add at the top here, I wanted to add one more enum item after prop. I'd have to add it there on the list below it. I'd have to add it in the hierarchy below that. You know, it's just like, it's simple, you know, like you can imagine doing it, but then after you've done it 100 times, you're going to mess it up a few times. And that time will cost you, you know, it'll cost you effort, it'll cost you frustration. And yeah, I think that this is a very natural candidate for generation. Okay, another thing, boot scripts. I love using module scripts. I love having that functionality shared and being able to directly index script functionality without using bindable events or functions. It's a lot more type safe as well. Yeah, and so yeah, generating this stuff is pretty awesome. It's basically just a list of scripts that I want to start in a specific order, and I usually pass a made class to it so that I can easily clean it up. This means that I can very quickly make well-defined systems that are very easy to test and sandbox because they have a built-in cleanup function. And so, yeah, it's worked out super well for me so far. I very much enjoy generating the boot scripts. I think there's definitely a lot more you could do with it. I certainly have a very vanilla solution right now, as you can tell from the code, just speak a bunch of lines. But, you know, the reason I'm telling you all this is so that you can go do something cool. And if you do make something cool, let me know. I'd love to see it. Okay, finally, probably the most exciting, but also, well, I might have bit off more than I can chew in some ways, but I've almost gotten this working perfectly. I'm using it in a few of my games right now, but basically how it works is it's essentially a fully type safe way to access complex user data structures. For example, you can like it will serialize and deserialize complex data types automatically on your behalf and store them in the data store. And then when you, so you can write by just giving it the data and then retrieve that data with it be fully typed and everything. And you never have to accidentally make a typo for like a specific You know, let's say that in the example above, one of the properties is a company name. I know for a fact, because I've been doing this for 15 years, that there would be times when I'd accidentally just type in name instead of company name. And because in a regular data store, it's kind of, you know, it's reaching into the void a bit. Like you can't really do as much protection for that unless you make a list of, you know, Git functions. And that's what this does. It makes a list of Git functions that, because they're generated, they're not going to have those kind of typos. And so long as you have the structure of your data defined in the configuration file, you can very quickly generate an entire tree of this stuff, an entire, you know, type safe version with built-in support for like all the number data. Like each, like when it's basic user data, for example, like numbers, ints, strings, all that stuff. I try to store it in its own unique data store. And then as a result, everything that's a number I can store in an ordered data store. So that makes for, you know, doing leaderboards and stuff later a lot easier. Yeah, and so this is the Rojo workflow, essentially. This is what the kind of things that you can unlock with Rojo. And let's go over the specific benefits. Let's one more time. Let's lock them in, because yeah, the first, I'd say, area of benefits is the Git version control. You can view detailed code changes by commit. You can branch and merge projects. You can keep your workspaces separate, you know, with the branching and merging. And you can automate processes with GitHub Actions. Command line tools. You can quickly install tools on new devices. You can integrate into a rich ecosystem of tools. Once you've got your workflow ready to bring in new tools, that means you can almost always find something that solves your problem. Like I'd say 90% of the problems I deal with as a programmer have been solved by an open source tool somewhere, tool and package. Yeah. You can use, specifically, you can use Stylua to auto-format, Moonwave to auto-document, and Spreadsheet to Lua to auto-configure, I guess. Or auto-maintain data. And you can write tools in your preferred language. Like, honestly, that's something which I don't think I touched on too much, but it's a lot more fun to write in other programming languages for specific things. Like making UI in, I don't know, JavaScript, or I guess realistically TypeScript, or even just making it in Figma. Like you can make things in the language that, or media or platform that you feel best empowers you to create something awesome. And by using command line tools, you can sort of bridge the gap. You can get what you created in a different place into your Roblox game. And it just, I think if there was just one thing to sell it all, it'd be that. It'd be the fact that a Rojo workflow allows you to just connect to the rest of the professional software world and get all the benefits of it. You get access to the probably one of the best package managers on Roblox. Nevermore's good as well, but I don't think it has a command line version currently. You can, and with this allows you to integrate open source code. Just yesterday, I downloaded. I needed to add Ragdoll support for a project I was working on. I was like, okay, how do I do that? I went to the Wally package manager website, looked up Ragdoll, clicked the second one down, copied the name of it, pasted it in my script, clicked a single button to download everything. And then I had I had the entire Ragdoll functionality working within what? I basically added the entire Ragdoll system in 3 minutes. Like it, and it worked. It worked perfectly. And if it didn't work, I have no doubt that they'd patch it, and then it would work then. Like when you use a package manager, you're essentially adding programmers to your team at zero cost. And that's just a fantastic advantage to have, especially because I know most of us are developing games on a budget. So yeah, efficiency for the win. Yeah, you can publish your own packages. I have published too many packages, probably. I love modularizing my workflow and open sourcing it. And most of the good ones are documented. So if you see a package I made and want to know if I think it's worth going into, either it'll be a port of another package where I've made it type safe, which feel free to use that, or it'll be my own thing. And if I've documented it, it means thumbs up. This will be amazing. It'll change your life. And if I haven't, it means I'm still deciding about if it'll change your life. So yeah, but no, you can publish your own packages. You can really contribute back to all that stuff, as well as when you do open source your projects, other people can step in to help you out. If someone finds a bug, they can make a request on GitHub they can make the patch themselves and then push it into the branch where you can approve it, and then just have it be updated on your own end. And then with GitHub Actions, every time you commit, you could have it published to Wally directly. And yeah, there's just a lot of cool things in the Wally ecosystem. Yeah, one thing which I don't think I talked too much on was, some of you are probably wondering, why can't I just copy the code from from the toolbox? Why can't I just use that? Why can't I just download it and put it manually into my game? That's because I've seen this happen so many times. What'll happen is someone takes an open source module and they add it to their game, and then they change line 833 in the script, and they'll change it to something specific to their game, and that's fine until they forget about it. And then for their next project, they copy that same code to their other project, and now they have a list of game-specific changes they've made to that script that will break it in this new game. And so the fact that Wally packages are downloadable, and every time you want to download it, it erases all the previous packages and then re-downloads them. It discourages you from giving yourself a headache in the future. You can trust that when a Wally package is downloaded, it is the same Wally package as you use in other projects. And if there are improvements you want to make, you can make them and get that updated across your projects. And while at the same time being feeling safe in the fact that this is the same code. And yeah, and if you do really need project specific alterations to it, by all means, there are exceptions for a reason. But I usually just use a wrapper for when I really want to do that. I rather just a script that I use to index the package rather than editing the package itself. And that's the cool thing about so much of this workflow stuff. It will improve your life in ways that you don't even appreciate in the moment. Like just the things that it'll guide you into. It's kind of like how if you have all your scripts set to strict, it'll be a headache at first, and you won't be able to do some things. But almost every time, with the exception of UI property tables, type safety has almost always encouraged me to go in a better direction in terms of how I structure my code. It just won't let you do things that'll give you a headache in the future. And having those kind of guardrails is just really useful, especially because in my case, I started learning how to code on my own when I was, 10. It took. I did take a few classes in high school and college, but by no means was that where I learned the majority of my programming understanding. A lot of it's self-taught, and with that comes a lot of bad habits. And these kinds of systems, these kinds of professional tools, they exist to help fight those bad habits, to help, help shape you into a programmer which can better integrate your skills into the wider industry. And yeah. I'm sure by now y'all have read this page. I won't go over it line by line. We've talked about it enough. Let's see. Okay, code generation. Once again, write systems in your preferred language. Like this is something actually worth mentioning. There's this really useful Python package called dpath, D-P-A-T-H. And I use it all the time because I love making complex hierarchies of data. And it's just, it's just there might be a Wally package for it for I know. And if there isn't, I probably will make one at some point. But I first learned about dpath through following like Python tutorials and talking to like ChatGPT and stuff. ChatGPT can be very useful for learning how to program in a new language, by the way, in case you're feeling a bit intimidated. It'll answer all the questions, and unlike Stack Overflow, won't call you an idiot. So yeah, it's a nice system. And yeah, I would say that in Python, Python just handles that stuff better. I was able to make my current analytics workflow generate some very complex tables in Python, and it just felt right. It felt like the language itself was supporting what I was doing a lot better. And yeah, I think that the code generation can really allow you to unify that stuff. We've gone over most of this stuff already. Storing information in preferred file formats. The JSON files are amazing, and so are Toml. Toml and JSON are what you need for 90% of your configuration stuff, and then YAML for the last 10%. You can auto-maintain repetitive scripts, keep scripts clean from single-line edits. Like once again, like for what it's worth, Wally Package Manager is technically a version of like code generation, except it's just copying the code from an internal source. So you'll see some overlap, but that's because it's like the rectangle and square situation where there are benefits to one that just overflow to the other. And yeah, formatting complex types for type checking. That Datastore generation script I mentioned earlier, it has so many weird types in it. That would not be feasible to maintain individually. But because it's done automatically, because it handles the serialization function writing automatically, it allows for a really just elegant solution at the end of the day. Okay, and then these are the final benefits. They're a little bit less, tangible example stuff, but I think that they're very important. And I need to get to 25. So the first one is getting experience with industry standard tools. GitHub and a Git workflow. That's not something you'd experience just making Roblox games in studio, at least not for a while. And I can say that every external to Roblox professional work I've ever done has used some sort of version control in terms of programming. It's just the way people do this stuff. And so I love Roblox, and I will be staying on it for probably the rest of my life. But it's good to be able to learn from the external industry and bring that back home and see the benefits of it. Because I think that, Roblox is talking a lot about how it's aging up its audience. Well, it's also aging up its developers. I'm 25, going on 40. And as a result, like I'm doing things now which would have, blown my mind at 15. And a lot of that's because of stuff I learned outside of Roblox and then just brought back. And yeah, that includes learning languages beyond Lua and Luau. I still use Lua and Luau for most of my work, but I now through using languages like C# and Python and all these other things, I just slowly refine my processes over time. For example, using the idea of using constants and all these different things. I believe that came from JavaScript. The ideas I've had around let's see, type safety. That was almost certainly from C#, if I remember correctly. And so just like all these different type stuff, like all these different insights and guidance, yeah, that's something which is available to you through working with other languages. And I heavily encourage you to put time into that. And then finally, it just makes you more competitive. A team that uses Rojo, I genuinely believe one developer using Rojo can beat a team of 4 to 5 developers who don't, who are having to do all this stuff manually, who aren't getting able to benefit from all the value provided by a wider ecosystem of tools. So yeah, take that advantage. And if you're a large team, you'll be able to outcompete other large teams. And there's just like it's just many benefits to making this kind of jump. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope I've convinced you to give it a shot. It'll be a headache to get into at first, but it's one headache now to save you thousands of headaches in the future. And yeah.
Thank you, CJ. Alrighty, let's get started with the Q&As. Please remember to send all your questions in the form being displayed at the top of your screen. Alrighty. So our first question comes from Viewported. Yeah, it states, can you suggest any classes or courses that would help me with developing on Roblox or even with the accelerator program?
So I believe the accelerator program no longer exists, unfortunately, but as to just general ways to learn in courses, in my experience, and this might just be more how I've learned to learn, there are certain things that definitely, like I was a game design major, so like I learned a lot of stuff related to pitching a game in college, as well as just general high-level design theory. So, there are places for a college course, but obviously those are expensive. I'd say if you really want to just start getting some basic, I guess, wisdom in the area, the YouTube GDC Talk channel, those have so much gold in them. Just the Game Developer Conference stuff. They've covered so many different areas with some of the brightest minds in the game development industry. Let's see, I really don't have any courses that I'd recommend, I guess, because to me, like, programming is always going to be a much more flexible process. It'll be about making projects. And, if you have a mentor figure or someone who could tell you if a project is good or not, that's great. But I don't think you necessarily need to, attend a class for it. Just, try to make something. And if you have questions, ask them.
Awesome. Our next question comes from Koi Ann. It states, why does Git enable so many developers to work together? Is it because collaborating is simpler when using branches? And does GitHub integrate with project management and ticketing systems for like Linear and Jira?
Oh yeah, so I know Bitbucket is actually owned by I believe Atlassian, the people who own Trello and Jira, and so you can definitely integrate that stuff. There's if you actually check out the GitHub website as well, you'll see the you can like raise issues, and you can actually have issues be bound to specific fixes and like open and close them. So project management is certainly something that is helped a ton by Git. Yeah, like it. In terms of, I guess, developers working together, I would say that the #1 advantage is more that you can define your workspace safely. I'm not sure if any of y'all who've worked in the Roblox version of Team Create, which for those who don't know was like a Google Docs style approach where everyone's kind of existing on the same canvas. Unlike with the document though, in programming, if you change a script or remove something or change an asset, other systems can break. And so having multiple developers working on the same code at the same time without branching will just, make stuff very much, you're just constantly stepping on each other's toes, as it were. And so I'd say that the benefit of branching is definitely that. And then when you do actually merge, I'd say that's also another opportunity for good developer teamwork, where you can actually talk with the other developers and like go over the code that's being merged together. And so that everyone stays more or less on the same page of things. Yeah, and one final thing of Git is that it allows for granular permissions of stuff. So you don't necessarily have to share your entire game with someone to let them work on it, which I think could be a pretty valuable change.
Awesome. Alrighty. And our next question comes from Noah Rustbatch. Is that right? If I have more or less no skill at scripting, I just know what parent means basically, can I still use Rojo as a useful resource?
Oh, I mean, like, it's definitely going to be useful. A lot of, like, I use Rojo to store game assets. Like, whenever I buy an asset pack from like Cinti Studios, I'll store it in there, like, just so I can have like versions of stuff over time, and I'll be able to go back to previous things. Like version control. I know for a fact, writers, people who like write books, they'll use Git because then they can see drafts of their scripts change over time. And so like there's a lot of, at the end of the day, Git is a tool. It's definitely a tool which is probably more mostly used by programmers, and it's definitely one which is like, don't get me wrong, knowing programming will help you in most things in life, but knowing parent is a good start. You just got to keep building off that. But I think that even if you're just wanting to have like just really good version control, Git is still worth investing into. And Rojo, there are various tools to convert a game to be Rojo ready. So you can get your game Rojo ready in like an hour or two, in most cases. And then really from there, like you'll get very basic functionality from Git and from Rojo within just a few hours. And I think those are a few hours well spent.
Alrighty. Our next question comes from, it comes from, again, Koyan. It states, do you think it would be viable to create a custom Datastore schema language and then transpile it into type-safe luau code?
So I believe they asked, they wanted to make a custom Datastore schema language, and they wanted to compile into type-safe Lua. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I mean, like, I think that obviously, the only, like, I guess, yellow flag in my head is creating a language. Like, for the most part, like, SQL exists, like, so you could have more, complicated, like code translation is certainly viable. In fact, I believe there is a literal tool out there that translates TypeScript to Luau. I think that it really depends on what you're hoping to get from it. I certainly believe it's possible. I think that obviously with the types of queries you'd be making to those kinds of data solutions, I personally would advise probably scoping down a bit first. But if this is a project you're really passionate about, I have no doubt that there'd be people out there who'd want to have a more data focused solution for Datastore scripts.
Alrighty, and this will be our last question. This is from Off Quebec, and it's a little bit of a fun one. It states, what is the most useful kinematic equation for you and why?
That is a fun one. All right. I think it's P equals MV. Just because so much of like because that's usually the one I use for projectile damage. Obviously, you have to get pressure, you use surface area and stuff like that. But like, just to know how much energy is in something moving that fast with that much mass. It's the equation for momentum. If anyone else is not familiar with it, and so I'd say that one is probably the most fun. It's probably not the one I use the most. I definitely use the one for drag more often, probably. But definitely, whenever I get to use that, it means I'm doing something really fun with the physics, and I'm probably gonna like have a custom destruction system in some sorts, or like you can do things like, for example, if you throw a spear at someone, you can transfer momentum into their character with that equation, and use the character's mass and the velocity that the spear, so you get the mass of the spear, the velocity of the spear, that gives you the momentum. Take that momentum, then divide it by the mass of the mass of the character, and you can, and then you could sort of get a very simple way to sort of figure out how fast they should be flinging back from getting hit by that spear. Though obviously that's definitely an oversimplification. In many ways, I probably misuse the kinematic equations. Newtonian physics is always going to be a little bit of a simplification, but I found that just P equals MV is just a very fun one. Also for vehicle handling, and that's definitely my favorite. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. Alrighty. And now before we wrap up, we're going to be doing our live challenges. So on your screen, you're going to see the first challenge. You just need to scan it with your QR code and answer the question. And I'll give it like 2 minutes. Alrighty. We will move on to the second question. If you look at your screen, you will see the second challenge. There's some like Jeopardy music in the background. Alrighty. Thank you so much, CJ. This is going to be a wrap up for this workshop. Stay tuned for our next workshop, which is our next workshop. Sorry, give me 1 second. I had it and then I lost it. Yeah. Our next workshop is creating magic, skills and effects in game programming.
Sounds exciting.
Yep. And it will be at around, it'll be at around 1 p.m. Pacific time.
Wait, that's Fabio's, right?
Yes.
Oh, he was in my accelerator program in 2022. Super talented guy. So one of the most talented like front end effects people on the platform for sure. Attend that.
Alrighty. Thank you so much, everyone. You enjoyed it. Have a good day.